everybody. Foley here for the 24th to the 30th of March, 2025. The weekly news recap. I forgot about the first part. Title of the fucking stream, right? Anyway, moving on. We'll continue as we mean to go. Alright, so this week Nintendo hosted a kind of surprise Nintendo Direct, and it is more than likely the last big news story for the original Nintendo Switch, and then whatever they decide to call the Switch 2. If they're going to keep calling it that, I don't know. But there is a Nintendo Direct for that next week, or possibly the week after. I forget the exact date. Anyway, so this one was focusing just on the original Nintendo Switch. So we'll start, kind of do these in the order that they appeared. So Dragon Quest, the 1 and 2 HD 2D remake. It's kind of following on for the Dragon Quest 3 HD 2D remake, and you're kind of wondering why you did it in this weird order. There's a couple of reasons. Dragon Quest 3 is kind of considered to be one of the better games in the first three Dragon Quests, so it kind of makes sense for them to start with that one. It's also kind of a prequel to 1 and 2. Kind of sets up the story that actually ends up happening in Dragon Quest 1 and 2. And Dragon Quest 1 and 2 being one of the first JRPGs ever made, it's a bit bare bones. So, you know, it kind of makes sense for them to start at 3. But anyway, 1 and 2 are now, or not now available, will be available pretty soon. I think there's a new character added as well, so there's like new events around that character. It's them at the top there of the screen now. Don't know, I've never played any any Dragon Quest before 8, which is the PS2 Dragon Quest, which is really good. And then I briefly played a bit of Elusive Age, I think is what it was called. I forget, one of the more recent ones. Anyway, was there a release date there? This year, some stage. Then No Sleep for Kaname Date, which is an AI The Somnium Files follow-up sequel type thing. If you're not familiar with this series, AI Somnium Files are kind of a visual novel detective game. Not unlike, I suppose they're not unlike the Danganronpa games, but they're not really as brutal as the Danganronpa is. They're a little bit, not nicer exactly, just still some horrible stuff that happens, but they're not quite as bad as those games. Anyway, it is that type of game. So if you saw my Let's Play of Master Detective Archives Raincode, it's that type of game, is what the AI The Somnium Files are. So No Sleep for Kaname Date is the next one. There's more of it. Anyway. No, I didn't want you to do that. I want you to do this. Okay. Raida Remastered, The Mystery of the Soulless Army. This was a Shin Megami Tensei spin-off game back in PlayStation 2, so early 2000. Is there a year for it? 2006. Okay, late 2000s. Just about. So this is a remaster, effectively, of that game. It was more of an action RPG as opposed to the turn-based RPGs that the Shin Megami Tensei series was known for at the time, and still is. Shadow Labyrinth has a release date, so it's going to be out kind of near the end of July. So the name is a little bit generic, so you may not remember what this is, but Shadow Labyrinth is effectively the edgy Pac-Man game that was shown off at a Nintendo Direct a while ago. So you've got some kind of like parasitic Pac-Man entity following you around, and they have some sort of nefarious plan for this kind of dungeon that you're walking your way into. And there are some like gameplay throwbacks to Pac-Man. It is a maze technically that you're walking around in. The kind of Pac thing that's following you around can do, as you can see, kind of behave like Pac-Man. Everything else about it, not entirely sure. You can team up with Pac-Man to turn into a kind of big mech thing at some point. Does it show that off in this trailer, or is that a different trailer? Yeah, you turn into a big mech that has a big mouth on its chest, which is Pac-Man. Anyway, it has a release date now, so it's end of July. It's the 18th of July, I think. Yeah. It's exclusively for the Switch currently. I don't know if it's going to make its way to other platforms. And kind of surprised because there's two games at the Nintendo Direct that were actually Sony first party games. So the first one is Patapon 1 and 2 Replay. This is a remaster, possibly full remake of the original Patapon 1 and 2. The Patapon games are a kind of rhythm strategy type game. So the idea is the face buttons are kind of drums, the drum beat for like people marching to war and so on. And the order that you play the drums in, it decides what the Patapons do. So if you play Patapon, they'll just march. If you play Pon Patapon, they'll attack, and so on and so forth. And then Patapon 1 and 2 are effectively the two games together. I think it's just a remaster. I don't think it's a full remake. Do we have a release date? I assume this is US dates, so it's the 11th of July and not the 7th of November, but anyway. This being a Sony first-party thing, it's also making its way to PlayStation, as you might expect. The other Sony first-party game, is that what was next? No, okay, we'll get to it in a second. Story of Seasons, The Grand Bazaar, it's another Story of Seasons game. It's one of the progenitors of the Stardew Valley-esque type thing, so I probably have an idea of what you're getting into with that. Metroid Prime 4. Okay, reminding people it's not dead. It's not dead yet. Or still not dead, or whatever way you want to look at it. Anyway, long in development, Metroid Prime 4 finally showed off a bit of gameplay. And yeah, it looks like Metroid Prime alright. So they got that going for them. The new planet, new powers. The scanning thing is still a thing. Samus has psychic powers now, or psycho powers, that lets her open doors. Incredible. I forget what the exact phrase that was used in the trailer. It was like pick up objects and open doors or something with this fantastic power. It's like, that's what you're going to use the power to do? Okay. I mean, to be fair, if I had like telekinesis, that is all I'd be doing. I'd just be opening doors randomly. Anyway. Otherwise, I don't think we have anything around a story or anything like that, but it's not like the Metroid story is super in-depth or anything like that. Release date? Maybe? There are Metroids, and wait, no release date, coming 2025. So it's still coming. It may end up being a Switch 2 launch title, though not necessarily a Switch 2 exclusive. Disney Villains Cursed Cafe was a surprise launch, so this is released now. It is essentially Coffee Talk game, but Disney Villains. So if that's something you might be interested in. Witchbrook looks kind of interesting, actually. So it's kind of a slice of life thing where you're going to a magical academy. So a little bit Harry Potter. By way of like cozy cottage core in some ways. So you're attending this Witchbrook University, which is effectively like Magic Land University. But then you have like off-campus stories, and you have odd jobs and friends you can meet up with and form relationships and all that kind of stuff. So it's got a little bit of Stardew Valley, Story of Seasons, just wrapped up in a kind of magic, wizardry, witchy kind of stuff. Does it have a release date? No, it's just the end of the year at some stage. Winter 2025. Okay, so the next ones were kind of like a rapid fire sort of thing, so I'm just going to rapid fire them as well. The Eternal Life of Goldman is a hand-drawn platforming thing, so like all the animations, all of the character art, and so on and so forth is all hand-drawn. It's not 3D. It looks pretty good as a really cool, like, sort of old-school platformer. Gradius Origins is essentially almost every fucking Gradius game, I think. It's Gradius 1, 2, and 3. And Salamander 1 and 2. And then also, and there's also, like, a new Gradius, or a new Salamander, if you prefer. Salamander 3. These are, like, the old-school shmups, you know, the old school arcade of a tiny spaceship in space fights bigger spaceship in space. Like it's that kind of game. Rift of the Necrodancer has been on PC since the end of last year, so it's making its way to Nintendo Switch now, and it also has a Celeste song pack, which is pretty cool. The Rift songs are already pretty good, and the Celeste soundtrack is also very good, so merging the two of them together is good stuff. Makes sense. Tamagotchi Plaza, I don't know. I think it's Animal Crossing, but basically Tamagotchi. But not like the little like the old Tamagotchi like pets that people might remember from, well, my childhood a long time ago. I'm not sure if it's related. It must be related because the symbol on the O is the exact thing, so I guess it is related. Anyway. Pokemon Legends ZA is, I think it's a remake of Pokemon XY. Not sure. I haven't really followed it fully, but it's another Pokemon game. And the idea is you are making your way through the Pokemon League. You are starting off at rank Z, and trying to make your way up to rank A, essentially. So during the day, you do like capture Pokemon and follow the story plot, I imagine, and stuff like that. And then at night, the city is transformed into a kind of league battle area where you can seek out people who are higher rank than you and try to beat them and make your way up the ranks that way. I don't think it's like an online multiplayer battle thing though, because I think it's all scripted still. So I don't know. I don't really follow the Pokemon games, so someone who knows better can tell you. Rhythm Heaven Groove, next game from the Rhythm Heaven series. So the Rhythm Heaven games are kind of a collection of mini games that are based around rhythm action stuff. This is kind of just very basically just trying to tell you what a rhythm game is, I guess. But the rhythm action stuff for Rhythm Heaven was it kind of gives you other things in the environment to show you how to move to the beat. So it's kind of just explaining how it works. Here is that there's you, and then there's usually a bunch of other things on the screen that are also moving to the beat, and you're using how they behave to figure out how to move to the beat. You know, when to press the button, when to do those kind of things, which is very basic rhythm game stuff. But yeah, there's tons of different mini games, tons of little things. It's a very good series. Anyway, Rhythm Heaven Groove. The virtual game card. Right, so this obviously isn't a game, but this is kind of this new thing that Nintendo is introducing, and the idea is a way to share your digital games with other people. And like ordinarily, if you wanted to share like a physical game card, it would be straightforward. It's like, here you go, we're sharing it. But obviously, you can't necessarily share digital games that you've downloaded because they'd need to have your account, and then there's going to be some weirdness if both of you have the game downloaded at the same time, who actually gets to play it. So this is this is Nintendo's, fuck's sake, Nintendo's attempt at kind of digital game sharing, if you will. This is kind of already a thing on Steam. Steam has like a family sharing plan where you can connect up to like 6 accounts or something, and they can all share games between each other. Nintendo's kind of doing it a bit of a strange way in that it's turning the digital download of the game into a virtual game card. So you have like a distinct instance of the digital game that you are sharing. So once you have shared that to another account or to another player, you can't play it anymore. You have to wait for it to come back. It will automatically come back in 2 weeks. Obviously, you can get it back earlier than that or what have you. It seems like a very heavy-handed way to do it, but it's also like there aren't too many ways you can do it right now to share your the only real way to do it is to share your account, which not everybody wants to do. If you just want to share one game with them. And as I said, there is obviously the issue with registering a console and that kind of thing. If you decide you both want to play Breath of the Wild at the same time, you know, Nintendo will complain that you already have one license for this and it's already in use kind of thing. So you're still not going to get around that issue of both of you wanting to play the same game at once. But it's a bit more of a structured way of doing it. I am kind of curious if this does have something to do with some additional layer of DRM they have for the Switch 2. and that they're maybe trying to get out ahead of it now before the Switch 2 actually comes out. But yeah, it is a way to share your digital games, essentially. It's the easiest way to look at it. The high level view of these virtual game cards is that it's a way to share digital games. Which you don't really have an easy way to do right now. Like, you can't even do this with PlayStation. I don't know about Xbox. You can't do it in PlayStation anyway. You can do the same way of just sharing your account, but I don't think there's a way to do it across devices. Anybody can play any game that's installed on your PlayStation, even if you all have different accounts logged in. If the game is installed, anybody can play it. But I don't think there's a way to like link family accounts across places. Like, I couldn't link an account with my brother or something, and I could then share the game with him. Like, that's not a thing you can do on PlayStation. It is a thing you can do through Steam, and will eventually be a thing you can do through Nintendo, which is the plan. Anyway, gonna move on from there. High on Life. It's already on a lot of other consoles. It's the first-person shooter that's written by the Rick and Morty guys. Star Overdrive's coming out pretty soon, April 10th. It's a kind of adventure sandbox thing where you are kind of sand surfing on this surfboard kind of thing. The Wandering Village, I think, is already on PC. It's a kind of city builder thing, but the city is on the back of this giant monster creature that's wandering the landscape. Fantasy Life I, similarly, is out soon enough, end of May. Fantasy Life I, Girl Who Steals Time, is again a sort of Stardew Valley slice of life thing, but does have a kind of job system around it. So you can like take on different jobs and level those jobs up, and you get different skills depending on how much time you put into those jobs. And then there's the Girl Who Steals Time. There's a time travel aspect to the game as well. Saga Frontier 2 Remastered is exactly what it sounds like. It's a remastering of the 1999 JRPG. The Saga Frontier series, was a very good JRPG. Monument Valley 1 and 2 are coming as a distinct package, includes all of the DLC and what have you, April 15th, 2025, so pretty soon. Third game is making its way to Switch at some point in the summer, but if you want to play it right now, it's already on mobile. It's been there since the end of last year. Okay, so this was the other Sony first-party property, Everybody's Golf, or Hot Shots Golf, as it's known in Japan. And they're just deciding to combine both titles now. It's a little bit of Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. Because Resident Evil outside of Japan, but it's known as Biohazard inside Japan. It's kind of the same deal here. Everybody's Golf everywhere, basically, except Japan. And then Hot Shots Golf inside Japan. Anyway, it's a golf game. It's an anime golf game. It's fine. It's decent. Be making its way to Switch later on in the year. Marvel Cosmic Invasion is a kind of cool throwback game to the old Marvel beat-em-ups that Capcom or Konami used to do. So this is it's actually a brand new game from the .emu guys, but it is very much like you could have pulled it out of the 90s beat-em-ups effectively for the kind of Marvel games. So it's Captain America, Wolverine, and then I don't know. Honestly, I think that's Nova? Nova, possibly? No, that's Nova. Okay, I don't know who the other person is. Captain Marvel? When did Captain Marvel get like an energy sword thing? Anyway, Storm, Spider-Man. I'm sure there'll be other characters, but as you can see, it's very much like a kind of old school beat 'em up. There's Venom as well. Yeah, I don't know who the flying person is. Is it Magic? I didn't think Magic could fly, though. Anyway, don't know who that is. I haven't been following comics for a good long time. Tomodachi Life is probably the one that you may have seen making its way around social media because it had a very strange trailer. The Tomodachi Life games in general are kind of strange. Calling it a game is maybe a little bit too much. It's really more of a simulation. So Tomodachi Life is kind of, if you took Animal Crossing or you took The Sims or something like that and basically took away any control from the game, you sort of you create these sort of me looking things. and the game will sort of automatically give them a personality, give them different quirks, different goals and stuff like that, and you kind of just let them do their thing. And a lot of the fun of Tomodachi Life is just seeing the ridiculous scenarios that they can get up to, and the different scenarios the game has put into it. So this is probably, you may have seen this making its way around social media, this exact image right there. Anyway, it's very funny. So that's making its way some stage later this year. And then the very last thing isn't a game at all. It's a new app from Nintendo. It's Nintendo Today. It's meant to be a news app / calendar app. It kind of feels like it's an app just for Nintendo press releases, because that feels like what it is. And somebody did make the remark that this is potentially Nintendo's way of getting away from the social media landscape for their press releases. So if they're putting out something that would ordinarily be a tweet, for instance, they might be pushing themselves to put it into this app instead, to get away from Twitter as a shithole, to get away from Meta and get away from whoever else. We'll see. It feels kind of experimental at the moment, but we'll see how it works out for them. Anyway, that should be it for the Nintendo Direct. At least probably the last one for the original Switch. Next week's one, or the week after that, I forget when the date is, will be all about the Switch 2. But that wasn't the only update happening this week. So Mind's Eye, you may potentially be familiar with, was shown off, I think, the Game Awards, the end of last year. This is, I think, one of the first games that's going to be coming off the Everywhere platform, which is this kind of Roblox / Fortnite kind of thing that was created by some ex-Rockstar people, ex-GTA and stuff like that. So this is kind of their first game. It's extremely generic third-person shooter. There's a politics, and there's a tech bro guy, and these robots that are taking over, and you've got your John action guy just shooting a bunch of stuff. It's a story trailer. You're not going to see much gameplay, but yeah, it looked pretty basic, I guess. In one way, you'd probably want to keep it generic enough if it's going to be built off a kind of generic user-generated content system. But in another way, it's a little risky to come out of the gate with a not particularly interesting thing right at the beginning. Like, we'll see how it works out for them, but I don't. I think they might want to rethink that one. Anyway, I don't think there's a release date for it or anything yet either. Moving on. So this was kind of a funny skit between Nolan North and Troy Baker for the Indiana Jones PlayStation release, which will be some stage in April. There's a fun back and forth here about like Nathan Drake and Indiana Jones and stuff like that. But I'm going to skip ahead to the release date. April 17th, 2025. So you'll be able to play Indiana Jones if you haven't been able to up until now on PlayStation. Then we have two games that I played as part of the last Steam Next Fest. You can check out some of these videos. They were pre-recorded. I didn't do them live. So you can check them out over on the YouTube channel. So the first one is Moroi. Has its release date. It's going to be at the end of April. Moroi was a really interesting top-down... It's like a twin-stick hack and slash, twin-stick shooter. But it has a lot of like dark comedy. Like very funny. For things that are probably shouldn't be very funny. But I thought it was really well done. Some very funny dialogue. That's, again, probably not supposed to be. It is very gross and very awful, and some of the things that are happening are not particularly wholesome. But still, they do find some way to make the stuff very funny. Anyway, that's Moroi, end of April at some stage. Demo now. 30th of April. And then Repose, which was not funny at all. This is a horror game. It's a horror game and kind of the old, very old, like Macintosh style games of the kind of black and white style that Return of the Aubergine was also doing. So it's working on a grid base. It's a little bit of I forget what that game is called. It's Dungeon of Gridrock, Dungeon of Grimrock, something like that. where you moved specifically on grids and you rotated in space and moved and stuff like that. At its core, it's kind of a survival game. You are delving deep into the dungeons of this company to collect oxygen tanks from other people who have delved deep into the company. But things are going weird and things are going wrong, and maybe some horrible stuff is happening to you while you're doing this, and so on. I'm a little curious about how long the game is, because none of it's procedurally generated. It's all scripted, bespoke levels. Anyway, we'll see how it works out for them. 14th of April, so pretty soon. Next 2 weeks. Elsewhere, games not coming out very soon. Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2 gets yet another fucking delay, which is kind of hilarious. Delayed into the first half of 2025, which has obviously not happened now. It has now been delayed into the second half of 2025, and maybe it'll get delayed again. Like, the very first time we even heard about it maybe being a thing was like 2019, maybe? And then Hardsuit Labs, who were looking at it at the time, got the boost 2021, then it was given over to the Chinese room, and they've been working on it since. It was meant to come out last year, and then it was meant to come out early this year, and now it's coming out even later in the year, so who knows if it's actually ever going to come out. From what we have seen from the Chinese room's approach to it, is that it's really more spiritual successor rather than it is sequel. It's a much tighter action RPG rather than the original Vampire the Masquerade. Was a much broader RPG. It's kind of disappointing, but I was once they gave it to the Chinese room, I kind of felt like that's where it was going to go, because they're not really known for big, expansive systems-based games. You know, they're known for very tight first-person narrative things. So it was kind of expected. So the reasoning given is the usual. We just want to give them more time and polish it and so on. Bloodlines 2 is effectively finished. According to them, they just want to work on it further. This is consistent with Paradox, who's the publisher. Paradox's past statements about underestimating how much players cared about bugs in Cities Skylines 2, which was a lot. 1, they underestimated it a lot, and 2, players cared about it a lot. Anyway, Paradox have been kind of shitting the bed lately because they've been just pushing things out, not waiting for them to be finished, trying to effectively do beta testing while the game is already out, which hasn't gone well for them in the past. So I think they're a little bit scared, and they want to make sure that this doesn't have a lot of problems associated with it. So Paradox Interactive and the Chinese Room are committed to delivering this game, and we believe that ensuring great technical quality is more important than sticking to a specific date, which is true, but you do have to release the game eventually. Anyway, the game is currently in late development stage. Feedback from the community has been taken into account during this time. Chinese Room is working hard on quality assurance to ensure it is stable and free of bugs that could disrupt the player experience. I mean, stuff that has come from the Chinese Room has been good. You know, it's What Remains of Edith Finch, Still Wakes the Deep, which we played on the channel. Both very good, but not really action games, exactly. So you might imagine they are stepping outside of their wheelhouse here a little bit. They are going to be a little bit more ambitious, and there's a lot of things that they're going to have to take into account in this gameplay that they wouldn't have had to take into account for... Well, like, What Remains of Edith Finch didn't have any combat, didn't have a fail state, you know, it was a walking simulator, and Still Wakes the Deep was the monster catches you, you die. You know, there was no combat element to it, you know, there was no dodge out of the way and retaliate and stuff like that. It was just you get caught, you're dead. So they haven't had to do that kind of thing, which is why I've been a little bit worried about them. But, you know, we'll see. We'll see how it works out. I was just remarking, I think, talking about Pillars of Eternity, because I had started playing it a while ago and finding that I was not enjoying it because it was real-time combat and I wasn't understanding the game mechanics and why I was dying so much and so on. Well, it turns out Obsidian were listening to me, I guess, because Pillars of Eternity is getting a turn-based combat mode at some stage this year or maybe next year. So they're planning to add turn-based combat to the acclaimed old school RPG for its 10-year anniversary. So from a blog post or forum post coming later this year, Watchers, which is what the main character of Pillars is called, will be able to help us test a brand new feature, turn-based combat. We're excited to explore this new way to experience encounters in Pillars of Eternity and your feedback will help shape its future. Look forward to these things being shared in the near future. So Pillars of Eternity 2 launched with real-time with pause combat, which is what Pillars of Eternity 1 is like, but then very quickly added turn-based combat afterwards in a kind of post-launch update. And it is nice to see them going back to the original. Because again, it's 10 years old. You could have figured they would have moved on by now. Obsidian became part of Microsoft in between those years. You know, you would think Microsoft wouldn't give them time to do something like this. So it's cool that they're getting the chance to do it. And it's, from a more selfish standpoint, it gives me a reason to go back and play it. Because now it's turn-based. And now I can see if I really didn't like the game, or was it just because I wasn't understanding the game mechanics. Anyway, free Epic game this week. It's actually 2 free Epic games this week. Cat Quest, which has been on the Epic Game Store, free on the Epic Game Store before. It's a action RPG kind of thing. You play a cat. You do not cat things necessarily. But yeah, it's kind of a fun little action RPG type game. And then Neko Ghost Jump, I'm not familiar with, but it's another cat game. Puzzle platformer. It does look like it's going for the old school 3D platformer kind of thing. So it does have a 2D, 3D thing, so it does have a little bit of... Oh, you can just switch it on the fly. That's interesting. Anyway, it does have a little bit of like the old school platformers from like SNES era, and then the more 3D ones from the PS1, PS2 era. Anyway, Neko Ghost Jump. Moving on. We're coming up to the beginning of the month, so PlayStation Plus is getting refresh even. PlayStation Plus Monthly Essential. Some decent games. Well, one decent game. RoboCop Rogue City is a very good first-person shooter. Very tight paced. Maybe a little difficult at the end. It's got a bit of a strong difficulty spike near the end, but otherwise it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of throwback to the original films. I just think it's a really well done game that we're not expecting to be as good as it is, but it is actually very good. And we have the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which is a multiplayer game. It's like an asymmetric multiplayer thing where you have a little bit of Dead by Daylight, and the way Dead by Daylight is 1v4, Texas Chainsaw Massacre is 3v5. So there are 3 killers spread out across the map. The map is broken up into 3 sections, effectively. So you have the basement of the house itself, and then the environment outside the house, the garden, I suppose, if you prefer. And the killers are all started in one of those locations. So there's a killer in each location at the beginning of the game. Beginning of the match, and the 5 survivor characters are all started off in the basement, so you have to escape the basement, escape that killer, then escape the house, then escape the garden, and if you manage to escape all 3, then you win. The killers aren't necessarily confined to their locations though, so they can come down or come up or whatever. They can move anywhere on the map effectively. I don't know how well it was received, because any gameplay I'd ever seen of it, it seemed heavily lopsided. Like the killers were winning almost all the time. So at least in Dead by Daylight, you might see the survivors winning every now and then. Sometimes maybe 1 or 2 of them escape. Who knows? No, hardly anybody ever escaped Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I don't know how well it's been received anyway. Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth Hacker's Memory. I have no idea what that is, but it sounds like a visual novel Digimon thing. Discover the mysterious backstory to the events that happened in Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth. Okay, so it's even a spin-off of another game. Okay, I don't know. If you follow Digimon, maybe you know that bit better than I do. But anyway, RoboCop's good. Give that a shot at least. Those are some of the games you can play soon. What if you wanted to play something right now? Well, you can now play Atomfall. So Atomfall marketed release was 27th, which was Thursday, but it actually came out on the 24th because it did that early access bullshit thing. Anyway, from what I've seen, it's pretty well received. It's kind of Fallout. It's kind of a bit Far Cry. You are amnesiac guy, wakes up inside this quarantine zone that's been isolated from the rest of the world for X number of years. And some weirdness has been happening in there. It is very much the north of England kind of stuff. But yeah, from what I've seen, it seems like it's a pretty fun time. And you can smack people with a cricket bat, as you just saw. Right. First Berserker Kazan is kind of a spin-off of the Dungeon and Fight universe, which was I don't know if Dungeon and Fight started as a fighter game or if it started as a kind of Gauntlet clone or something like that, but the first Berserker Kazan is a Souls-like type thing. I'm just going to skip ahead, get to some gameplay. So it's a bit of a Souls-like kind of game. It does have difficulty options, so you don't have to just, smash your head against the wall if you are finding a struggle. You can adjust the difficulty down or up if you prefer, and so on. But it's a Souls game. Expect what you're expecting in those kind of games. Some bit of plodding combat, some bullshit bosses and balancing issues and what have you. It does have a cool loot system. The voice acting is really well done. I think it's Ben Starr who's doing Kazan. There's a guy whose name I never remember is doing this sort of demon that's possessing you at the time, but I never remember the guy. But he played the vampire in Vampire. Dr. Reed. Forget his name, though. Anyway, it's the first Berserker Kazan. Karma the Dark World, kind of a first-person horror type thing. It's not clear if it's actually like a walking simulator type deal or if there's actually like a puzzle element to the game or what have you. Because the only trailers I've ever seen have been story-based. Like there hasn't been, I haven't seen any like raw gameplay of the game yet. We'll see, but it certainly looks interesting. The gist of Karma the Dark World is you're jumping into the dreams or the memories or the mindscape of different people to sort of piece together. I think it's a conspiracy or maybe it's a murder mystery or something like that, but it's an excuse for them to give these kind of, otherworldly environments for you to navigate around. Anyway, it's Karma the Dark World. I think it's available on basically everything. Rosewater is a kind of Wild West, old school point and click adventure. So kind of think stuff like the Broken Sword games, or the Monkey Island games, but not funny, or at least not intentionally funny. We played a little bit of the Excavation of Hobbs Barrow, which is also a similar type of game. I don't think Rosewater is going to be going down the horror route. It's really very much a kind of old school Western type of story. I believe this is by a solo developer, and they've been working on it for a long time, and it is quite impressive for what they've managed to do as a solo dev. Anyway, that's Rosewater. Then we have AI Limit from the Chinese Hero Project, which is kind of a partner thing that Sony do with Chinese developers to get their games published outside of China. AI Limit is a Souls game. It's an anime Souls. It's going to look a lot like Code Vein, but it is not Code Vein, despite what it looks like. It's definitely not Code Vein, but it is a Souls-like type game. So again, everything I said about the first Berserker Kazan, you can have effectively the same thing here. It's going to be bullshit, frustrating stuff, and if you're into that kind of thing, great. If you're not, maybe don't play that game. As far as I can tell, AI Limit does not have difficulty adjustments. It's as hard as it's going to get, basically, or as easy as it's going to get. And then the last game we had from new releases is sort of a port, sort of a remake, sort of a patch update kind of thing. So the Hitman World of Assassination trilogy did have a VR game on the original PlayStation VR, and then there's a PC VR version of it. The original one, at least on the PSVR, was not all that great. You didn't have, like... There's a phrase they use in VR that I never remember, but it's when you, like, actually touch things with your hand and can manipulate them and stuff like that, and you're not just pressing a button and something happens. Like, you have to actually reach and grab something, or, like, reload the gun by putting the magazine in, kind of thing. There's a specific phrase for it, but I don't remember what it is. Anyway, the original VR game didn't have that. You just pressed buttons and could move around and that kind of thing. The new one, PSVR 2, does have gesture-based actions or whatever the actual phrase is. You know, stuff like that, like being able to part the curtains and that kind of thing. Being able to aim around corners and that kind of thing. It's very impressive. So I'll be getting that. Anyway, unfortunately though, it is now time to talk about the worst part of video games, the video game industry. So we have what has got to be the sign of a very healthy industry, that multiple publishers are ready to delay their games to avoid the GTA 6 onslaught, it is claimed. Let's see how they're happy to rush their games out to get in before a quarter so they can juice the numbers. But because GTA 6, suddenly they're able to just delay their games. No problem. That seems okay. Anyway, at least 2 live service developers have also said they will shift their major updates to avoid GTA 6. So GTA 6 due to release some stage at the end of this year, some stage in autumn. We don't know when. Rockstar, Take-Two are keeping very silent on it. There was even some news today, I think, that they were deliberately keeping silent on it because their plan is to effectively just do a big marketing splash right as it's coming out. Maybe like 2 or 3 weeks before the game comes out, they're just going to really ramp up their marketing instead of trickling out things. So other publishers might get very short notice that GTA 6 is coming out and may not be able to delay their games and stuff like that. But anyway, multiple major publishers are prepared to move their own releases in order to avoid it. This is according to an article from the Game Business. So a lot of these are speaking under anonymity because obviously if we knew who they are, we would know what game they're talking about. So anyway, Rockstar Games always suck a lot of money and, more importantly, time out of the market. We don't want to be anywhere near that. We are working up multiple different plans for our titles. So they do understand that games take time out of the market and not just money. And yet, they still keep trying to battle for the time in a game genre that has fully at capacity for live service stuff. Anyway, even without GTA, it's immensely difficult to find free time for new games to shine. Time is the real scarcity for us, not money. Not money. Money's not the scarcity. Why are you fucking laying people off then? If money's not the issue, money's not a problem. Time is the real scarcity. Anyway, we don't want to launch just before or just after the game. If it arrives in late October, that means you either have to launch early, which a lot of people seem to be doing with the recent glut of summer release dates, and to be fair, they are right about that. There's a lot of games coming out in like June and July, which would not typically have been a time for games to come out. Traditionally, June and July was a desert for game releases. Fucking nothing came out in June and July, and now we're having quite a few. And it does seem like they are very much just saying, we're just not going to release anything in fall, autumn, because GTA 6 is meant to come out at some stage there. Anyway, or go later, putting you up against the Black Friday sale. So if you decide to come after them in November or something like that, then yeah, you're going to end up hitting the sales period. GTA 6 is basically a huge meteor, and we will just stay clear of the blast zone. We will nudge our releases back or forward 3 weeks to avoid it. Of course, the problem is everyone is going to do the same. 3 to 4 weeks before or after GTA 6, you're going to get a load of games dropping content in what they believe will be the safe zone, but they're all doing it, so they're all going to cannibalize their own sales. Cool. That seems healthy. That seems healthy that one fucking game can completely upend the release schedules. I'm particularly interested in this one guy who says time is the real scarcity for us and not money. Why so many layoffs then? Because the whole point of the layoffs was we didn't have the money. Anyway, speaking of money, I guess, Ubisoft spins off new subsidiary for 3 of its biggest franchises in partnership with Tencent. So we were talking about this last week or the week before, that Ubisoft were considering effectively siphoning out their most popular or their most well-performing franchises into a separate company and effectively hollowing out Ubisoft as it stands now. In kind of a way for them to get back into a private market instead, or to effectively take themselves off the public without having to buy up all the shares. Like there's some accounting bullshit going on here that I feel should be illegal, but I suspect has some loophole in it that makes it not illegal. Anyway, Ubisoft are transforming by starting up a new subsidiary for some of the biggest and most battle-tested franchises. I think later on they say which they are, and specifically. So it's Rainbow Six, Siege, the Assassin's Creed series, and the Far Cry series. Which, again, it is the ones that probably make the most money for them. So there's an investment from Tencent as around 1.25 billion US dollars, which gives them a minority stake in it. Tencent were kind of instrumental in ensuring Ubisoft stayed in the hands of the Guillemot family, rather than being bought out by Viacom 10 years ago or so. It's also the reason why their share price was so high, was because of this sort of hostile takeover thing that Viacom were trying to do. And Tencent pumping money into it pushed the share price up and up and up and up and up and up, until it got to the point that Viacom just couldn't buy any more shares to do their hostile takeover, and they stopped. But it did mean that Ubisoft's share price was massively inflated, and when it did eventually come back down to what it should have been, it was seen as a big crash for Ubisoft, because anyone who would have bought in at the top has obviously just lost a shit ton of money. Anyway, Ubisoft will reportedly keep on trucking on games from other Tom Clancy properties like The Division and Ghost Recon. Both were noted specifically in the statement, though no other franchises were discussed. So we didn't hear anything about Rayman or the Rabbids or Beyond Good and Evil 2 that's been in development for a million years. Prince of Persia, we don't know if that's going to this new subsidiary or if it's staying with Ubisoft. We don't know. We don't know what the new subsidiary is called. Is it going to be called Ubisoft something, or is it going to call it something else? Who knows? But we'll see what comes with that. I'm kind of curious when exactly they'll, cut the cord that sort of ties the two of them together, and they figure out a way to legally extract those three high-performing franchises out of Ubisoft, and find a way to legally cut ties. I'm be interested to see when they try that. Anyway, speaking of poor-performing companies, Warner Brothers, Hogwarts Legacy expansion has been reportedly cancelled, so they haven't confirmed this, but it is almost certainly true. That story DLC for Hogwarts Legacy was originally on the cards, was probably going to be coming out at some stage this year, or maybe early next year, but has since been cancelled by Warner Brothers Games, because they have just been doing really, really shit lately. They've not been performing well. Suicide Squad, Guild of Justice League cost them a lot of money. Multiverses did not take off the way they wanted it to. Hogwarts Legacy, if anything, was a surprise. Was a surprisingly well-performing game, because I don't think they expected it to. And then we do know that they have cancelled the Wonder Woman game that Monolith was working on, then shut down Monolith. We know that Rocksteady aren't doing support work for Suicide Squad, because that has effectively stopped needing any support. And they're being pushed onto making a new Batman Arkham game. Potentially starting from scratch on that, though, so that's a long way off. You would think they would have pushed this out anyway, so why did they cancel it? We don't really know, because they haven't confirmed they cancelled it in the first place. But anyway, Warner Brothers leadership has recently abandoned the idea after determining it wouldn't be enough to justify the price tag to new and returning players. One might suggest you just lower the price tag then, no? At least make some money, and not zero money, and waste all of that money in development. It's an odd reason to give, especially from Warner Brothers, because they have not exactly cared about the value to price ratio previously, particularly for DLC. These are the guys who put, loot boxes into Shadow of Mordor, whatever. These are the guys who had like $10 individual skins for the Batman Arkham Knight thing. Never mind all of the ridiculous microtransactions that are in Mortal Kombat, like paying for one-off fatalities. Like, Warner Brothers have never been a question about value versus cost ratio. So I kind of why I don't buy this excuse, basically. Not from Warner Brothers. If they were an ethical company, I would buy it. I would buy that excuse, but Warner Brothers games are not that. Anyway, Harry Potter Adventure has sold over 34 million copies, and a director's cut release seemed like it might be one of the few bright spots for Warner Brothers, but they've decided to kill it instead. Again, why? Like, what's the real reason? What's the real reason? Now, I kind of get the feeling that it's the new guy coming in who's trying to, like, put his stamp on things or something. Warner Brothers Games is currently in the midst of a leadership change because the last boss got fucking kicked out because he did so shit. And the new boss coming in has said he wants to regain the credibility and swagger of producing great games. So maybe he felt that... Maybe he feels the first game that comes out under his tenure needs to be some big thing and not like an expansion DLC thing. I don't know. Who knows if it's some sort of weird... fucking business politics thing, but I don't buy the leadership abandoned it because they thought it would cost too much for what they were getting. That's never been a concern for them in the past. I don't know why they would change now. Anyway, some slightly better news. Game Informer returns after being shut down by GameStop. So the end of August of last year, Game Informer, which is a very long-running video game publication, one of the few that still actually put out real magazines, been running for about 35 years, something like that. A long time. Almost the entire time I've been playing video games. Was shut down by GameStop August of last year, laid off everybody, and then turned the website effectively into like a single page thing. People weren't able to access the articles anymore. People who worked for the company weren't able to access their work to save it, you know, and show us like for CVs and stuff like that. They weren't able to access it. It was all a very big shit show. Anyway, Game Informer now, however, has been purchased by Gunzilla Games, and the Game Informer is coming back. The whole website coming back up. I think it should be back up right now, actually, if you check on it yourselves. And Game Informer will allegedly be operating independently. The whole team, who were previously laid off, has returned, and the website has been reinstated with its back content. When it was shut down, the site was completely stripped of articles, which prevented staff from saving their work. It was a very, very shitty thing to do to your employees. But hey, it's GameStop. I can't exactly be surprised. Anyway, Editor-in-Chief Matt Miller had to say that from the start, the new owners insisted on the idea of Game Informer remaining an independent editorial outlet. They felt just as strongly as our team did that the only path forward for us with an editorial group that made 100% of the decisions around what we cover and how we do so without any influence from them or anyone else. Our intent is to focus on highlighting the coolest games, celebrating the history and legacy of the gaming industry, and shining a spotlight on the creators and players who are charting its future. I'm deeply grateful for the trust and enthusiasm from the team at Gunzilla Games. They see the same potential in Game Informer as our team does, and their encouragement to do so ethically and free of outside pressure is laudable. It is, so long as they stick to it. We have seen previously, not in the video game industry, but in journalism in general, when kind of journalist outlets are purchased by wealthy private individuals, they might say at the beginning that you have editorial freedom, but they very quickly change their tune. Let's look at the Washington Post, New York Times, so on. We'll see how it works out for them. One kind of concerning thing is that Gunzilla Games is kind of heavily involved in blockchain games and NFT stuff. Not exactly known for its financial stability, so... You know, hopefully I'm wrong and this is a good thing and Game Informer leaves a long and happy life. I'd like to be. But I suspect I won't be. Anyway, so GameStop sold them. How's GameStop doing lately? Good? Real good? Not shutting down most of its stores and pivoting itself to blockchain now as well and crypto? Anyway, moving on. User research workers at Activision unionized. This is another union forming under Activision and under Microsoft. It's kind of... And I do feel like it's kind of telling that a lot of these unions are forming under Activision specifically. Almost like they're really shit to work for. Anyway, so they're going to unionize under the Communication Workers of America, which is effectively what every video game union in the US has been organized under. Microsoft has recognized the union, which is good. They don't have to do the kind of fighting for recognition kind of shit. This will be the first group of video game user researchers to form a union. You might be wondering, the fuck is a video game user researcher? They are essentially the people who do playtests for video games. The developers are busy developing. They don't necessarily have time to run user tests to get players in, players who haven't played the game before, who don't necessarily know how the game works. And they can figure out where the friction points are. If you've ever wondered why you've walked into a room and a game character might point out something in the room to you, and it's usually because in their playtesting they found people didn't find it. Or if you've ever seen, like, they've been reminded of a tutorial thing, like press X to jump or what have you, it's because someone forgot. That's like, it's all that kind of stuff. That's what user research is. It's to find points where people are getting lost or finding frustration in the gameplay or not finding fun in the gameplay and so on, and to feed that back to the developers, and developers can make a decision. And to say that, no, the game's meant to be that hard, get good. You know, that could just be their response. Anyway, we are excited to join our fellow game makers across the video game industry to show what's possible when workers can freely build solidarity in the workplace. Many of us were mobilized to do something about the layoffs in 2023 and 2024, and now we can look out for each other with a union. This was something that came up in GDC as well, that a lot of people were looking to unionize specifically because of the mass layoffs. And like, yeah, duh, obviously. But it's important to point out that the industry did this to themselves. Or rather, the executive side of the industry. Congratulations, you got unions now because of how shit you've treated everybody. All you have to do is spread the wealth around a little bit, but you wanted to keep it all for yourselves. Anyway, workers should not feel punished for pursuing a career that they love, and that's why we're organizing towards long-term sustainable careers in the industry. And we really hope that it works out for them. Unfortunately, it did not work out for some people at Crystal Dynamics. So Tomb Raider developer Crystal Dynamics announces more layoffs. We did not make this decision lightly. Yeah, sure you didn't. 17 talented staff have been affected by today's layoffs. Ultimately, this step was necessary to better align our current business needs and the studio's future success. Yada 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 bullshit corporate speech. It is not a reflection of the dedication or ability to those affected. Though remember, the guy back in the GTA story, time was the thing they needed, not money. Okay. Anyway, Crystal Dynamics is currently working on the next installment of Tomb Raider. Little is known about the upcoming game, which is being developed alongside Amazon. Amazon do not exactly have a good track record of releasing video games, so we'll see how that works out. And I just thought I'd put this in because it's another opportunity to bash Sony with their live service pivot and another opportunity to shit all over Jim Ryan. Anyway, ex-PlayStation boss Sean Layden says he left Sony in part because of pivot to live services. So the PlayStation 4 years were defined by blockbuster single-player, Game of the Year contenders, yada yada. It's a lot's been gone over why PlayStation 4 was particularly a good console. Because God of War, Spider-Man, a bunch of other shit came out. 2020, Sony decides, hey, let's do live service shit. And then very quickly after that, Sean Layden went, see ya. Former executive Sean Layden abruptly left Sony after more than 30 years of service right before the PS5 launched. He recently suggested that the strategy pivot to live service was part of the reason behind his departure. So he was speaking on a podcast, Save State Plus. To be honest, the company was making some strategic decisions about where they want to take the platform in the future, with a heavy emphasis in games as a service, live service gaming, subscription formulas, recurring revenue, all that. And that was kind of not my wheelhouse. I just make things like God of War, Spider-Man, Last of Us, Uncharted, Horizon. I didn't have the vision or the energy to try to take it to this new area of live service games. It seemed like a good time for me to step down. You could argue he's being diplomatic and charitable about his viewpoint on that. What I felt like is I don't want to be any part of that. We'll see. I mean, he hasn't necessarily done much in the industry since. He does a lot of interviews. You see him at a lot of conferences. He gives a lot of talks around that kind of thing. Whether he's taking a bit of a break from the more executive side of things and will eventually join a company, I don't know. Potentially he has enough money and doesn't need to, who knows? Anyway, Layden left Sony in September of 2019, a little over a year before the launch of the PS5. At the time when he did leave, there was no big press release. You may recall how Jim Ryan was treated when he left. It was a big, fucking birthday celebration, shit like that. He got a cake. He made the rounds for a bunch of studios. There was even stories about how he made rounds to all those studios kind of celebrating his leaving. Celebrating is the one I wanted to put in quotes, of him leaving Sony. He wasn't the only person celebrating that he left. But at the same time, a lot of those studios and a lot of those developers who were celebrating with him in the pictures were laid off, like, right afterwards. And he gave them no warning about any of that. Anyway, similarly, when Shinya Yoshida left, he actually did make the rounds as well, and it kind of feels like genuinely people were sorry to see him go. I certainly was. But Sean Layden didn't get that kind of send-off. It was just sort of an abrupt tweet that he left the company. So it really does feel like either he was forced out or just didn't want to be part of the change. The move wasn't accompanied by a formal press release and came just 6 months after Jim Ryan was promoted to CEO. Like, that's a very quick turnaround. And certainly suggests that maybe you don't agree with where the company's going now. Anyway, Jim Ryan was then replaced because of the fucking live service debacle. They've also seen the live service pivot go literally nowhere. There's a sense that Sony's live service ambitions this hardware cycle have come at the expense of delivering more of the single-player hits and experiments with new franchises the publisher's first-party portfolio has historically been known for. Which is literally every other PlayStation console was known for single-player, you know, taking risks, doing some different things, having a lot of different types of games available, and PS5 has had like one game. Anyway, pointing out the different live services that they've attempted, Helldivers 2 was almost accidentally popular. I don't feel like Sony really tried to publicize it or do any PR for it. It just sort of did best in spite of Sony. And even then, it's a second-party game kind of thing. Like, Sony they're publishing Helldivers, but they don't own it. The ones that they do actually own, though, Concord famously, obviously, went to shit. Destiny has been stagnating for a very long time now. And then they have all of the attempts to bring, like, The Last of Us as a multiplayer thing. God of War was trying to get a multiplayer thing. Horizon might still be trying to get one. We're not entirely sure. Anyway. The company has recently revealed new single-player projects. We've got the new thing from Naughty Dog, the Intergalactic. We've got Saros, is coming from Housemarque, but they're a long way off. They're arguably, possibly PlayStation 6, almost. You know, it's going to be a while before we see anything from them. Anyway, we'll leave Adamfall to play in the background. Anyway, that is your news for the 24th to the 30th of March, 2025. There's some interesting things from the Nintendo Direct, but it is very clear that it's the end of the Switch, of the original Switch, you know? Metroid Prime 4 might be the last game that comes out, but I do feel that it's gonna kind of straddle both consoles. It does seem like it might be a Switch 2 launch title as well. So it might end up being something like Breath of the Wild, where Breath of the Wild was also playable on the Wii U as well as the Nintendo Switch. They might do something similar with that, I don't know. Anyway, other things out of the Nintendo Switch Direct, again, nothing like Megaton, really. It was very interesting to see, like, Sony first-party games appearing on the Nintendo Switch. Like, that's interesting. And if they can do more of that, that will be good to see, because we're going to break down the kind of fanboy war shit and just have all the games available on everything, really. Just pick your console of choice at that point. You know, you're not having to buy a PlayStation because you want to play a particular game. You're not having to buy an Xbox because, like, it used to be you'd buy an Xbox because everyone was playing multiplayer on Xbox. And if you wanted to play multiplayer, you had to have an Xbox. You couldn't do it on PC or PlayStation or whatever. Cross-network gaming now kind of makes that irrelevant. Potentially, you can still argue that PC players have a substantial advantage when it comes to kind of multiplayer stuff. But there's nothing to say that, like, you have to buy a 360. You have to buy an Xbox One. You have to buy whatever in order to play online with your friends because they all have one for the same reason. And they're trying to convince either your parents or yourself that I can get an Xbox and a PlayStation. I have the money for that, right? No, I don't think so. having like making those decisions, like if you never have to make that decision again, and it really is just a case of which library do you prefer, I think is kind of the better way to look at it. Or even just which console form factor do you like? Which series of features does it provide? What services does PlayStation Plus give versus Game Pass versus whatever? You know, it's making it that decision instead. Anyway, the monthly game refresh for PlayStation, RoboCop, it's a good game. As I said, it's a pretty decent game. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I don't know what kind of concurrent player count it has nowadays. I don't know if it's still all that popular, so might struggle to find people to play it with. A couple of games getting the release dates. Moroi and Repose have some release dates coming out pretty soon. Indiana Jones game has made its way over to PlayStation, which is good because I'll finally get to play it. I haven't even attempted to play it on the PC. I don't know. I probably could have, but I would rather just wait and play it on PlayStation. Anyway, industry bullshit. Not a whole lot really happening. I mean, you have that idea that like one game, GTA 6, can just completely upend publishers' release schedules, but at the same time, we definitely know stories of them getting developers to crunch to get games out on time, and yet they can still just arbitrarily change the release date just because GTA 6. Like it's really frustrating that you definitely do have latitude on the release date. Like there's no reason to force the developers to push it out when the game's not ready, or they'd have to crunch to make it happen or anything like that. Like it's really annoying to hear. And definitely the guy saying that time is the thing that we need more of and not money, and yet so many layoffs in the industry. Like which one is correct? Even them recognizing that time is a factor, that there isn't as much time to play video games now because of games like League of Legends, like Valorant, like Fortnite, like whatever, that almost require you to play the game nonstop to get the most out of the money you put into it. Like they are aware of it, and yet they're still trying to just jam more in, knowing that there is not enough time, knowing that these games are going to fail because of it. And going, what a big shock. We thought it would do well. Anyway, I'm going to let it go. That was your news. It's happening outside on the channel. So I have finished Pillars of Eternity. Sorry, the main. So I finished Pillars of Eternity. Overall, story was good. Characters are good, dialogue is well written, and the quests are interesting, and the story plot I liked. I just was not a big fan of the combat. As I was saying with the, real-time and turn-based and stuff like that, I am curious if I would have enjoyed it more if it was turn-based. The DLC, The White March, was very good. I did actually enjoy that story a lot more than the main plot. And it does seem that they took the time to do some different things in the White March DLC. There's a lot more role playing basically in the DLC than there was in the original game. Anyway, that was that. Then I very quickly started and then finished A Hat in Time. Hat in Time, I had heard from a lot of people that it's a very fun platforming game. And it is. As it turns out, people were correct. It is a very fun platforming game. I enjoyed it a lot. There's a lot of charm to it. There's a lot of like funny scenarios. It very much is not taking itself very seriously at all. I enjoyed a lot of the different gimmicks, the different hats the character has. I did also like that you don't necessarily have to collect everything to finish the game. Like it is a little bit of Super Mario kind of thing, in that you only have to collect so many stars, or in this case, so many time pieces to move on to the next area or to finish the game entirely. Like you can obviously 100% it, and I have 100%ed it at this point. But you don't have to. That's nice. There's some kind of things where you are collecting pieces to make new hats. You're collecting balls of yarn to knit yourself new hats or something like that. There are way more pickups in the game than you will ever need. So you don't necessarily have to like really hunt them down. You can get the ones that are in your path and go after the ones that you think might be interesting to collect, but you don't have to like really be going after them. There's a lot of just nice things, nice ways to treat your player. Anyway, I thought that was really good. I've then started playing Phantom Fury. So I had played Ion Fury. Is that what it ended up being called? I feel like they changed the name of it after a while. Anyway, so this is a kind of a throwback first-person game. The original was kind of a throwback to the earlier Duke Nukem games, and then the sequel is a bit of a throwback to the later Duke Nukem games, where you're playing Shelly Bombshell Harrison or something like that. He's effectively like female Duke Nukem, essentially. I did like the original game, but I did find it was a little... a way to put it. It got a little bit repetitive, I guess, near the end. So right now it hasn't gotten repetitive, so we'll see how that works out. Hopefully it stays that way, because each new level has been at least somewhat interesting. Either it's a new environment, or you're given a new weapon, or there's a new enemy introduced or something. There always seems to be something different. At least in the original game, it did feel like a little bit too samey after a while. Like, I haven't done that fucking fighter jet section yet, so that might be interesting. Anyway, so I started playing that, and then I have very briefly begun Pillars of Eternity 2, which does have turn-based combat. So kind of interested to see, because I have heard that Pillars of Eternity 2 is like substantially better than the original Pillars. You know, it just takes everything they learned from the first game and just made it a lot better in the second game. So I'm kind of hoping that that is true. You know, the review scores do suggest that it is a very good game. So yeah, we'll see how that works out, if I enjoy it a little bit more than the original game. I did want to push through and finish the original game because there are story elements that carry over. But I did think that it would actually carry over your save, and I think it does carry over your save if you're playing on PC. But I think on console it doesn't. It doesn't carry over your save. But you are able to create a world state effectively. So you can just say what you did in the last game, and they'll just tick a bunch of boxes effectively to say how different quests finished up, and who did you meet, and whose quest line did you complete, and you know, who did you side with down the line, and that kind of thing. Anyway, but yeah, that's what I'll be doing off stream. On stream, like I keep saying, I keep trying to get back to, you know, either doing live streaming myself or doing some pre-recorded stuff, but it's just too much going on in my personal life right now. So I'm trying to outfit a new apartment essentially, and I'm having arguments with lots of people about it, and it is becoming very trying. So finding the energy and the motivation to stream after that is difficult, but I'm working on it. So we'll see. Anyway, watch this space. That's it for me for today. Have a good rest of your day, and hopefully we'll see you next time on the Weekly News Recap. Bye bye.